Good memory, but short. So happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
If you look, mothers have a lot of different attributes, but almost all of them are circled around three things. One is their desire for children, their desire for their children, or because of their children. So let's look at some of the mothers in the Bible for a second, because the attributes they show there are still applicable to us. The first mother in the Bible, Eve. We think of her as the one who ate the forbidden fruit, but she was a mother. And she was the first mother who grieved because she had a son who was murdered. Not only that, she had a son who was murdered by her other son. And I imagine that would cause her a considerable amount of grief. Mothers today still grieve when they lose a son or a daughter.
Yes.
It's the loss of a child. The first mother who grieved. Then there was Sarah. She was a mother who had so much patience, she waited 24 years, 25 years actually, for God's promise to be fulfilled. She laughed when she was told what God's promise was, but in 25 years' time, God came through. The mother who was patient. How patient are mothers today waiting for children to come home, to come to God, to come away from drugs or alcohol, or to come back in from something they've done wrong? How long does it take? Mothers have to be patient. Sarah was the first mother who was patient. Then there was Hagar. Hagar was the handmaid that Abraham had relations with and Father Ishmael by. And when that came to bout, Sarah and Abraham ejected Hagar from the area. She was a single mom with a child wandering through the desert. It said she sat down beside a rock and lifted up her voice and wept. Single mothers do that all the time over children because they can't afford them, because they can't look after them, because they can't care for them. But Hagar was the first one who really endured that process. Then there was Rebecca. Rebecca was the one who actually was a deception. She deceived her husband Isaac by having Jacob receive the blessing rather than Esau. She tricked him by having Jacob go out and bring in some meat for Isaac before Esau got home, so that Jacob got Isaac's blessing. She actually was a deceptive person, but she did it for her son. And God still blessed Jacob. He went on to become the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. But he did it because he met a girl named Rebecca. Now Rachel, sorry. She met Rachel, who was the daughter of Laban. And he loved Rachel very much, so that he worked for Laban for 7 years for Rachel's hand. And when the time came, the father substituted another daughter for Rachel. And then to get Rachel, he had to work another 7 years on top of that. To top it all off, the woman he loved, Rachel, was barren. There's a lot of women in the Bible who became mothers who were initially barren. Rachel was barren, but Leah was very fertile. But in the end, God blessed Rachel and gave her 2 sons, although she died at childbirth for Benjamin. These were the 12 tribes, the beginning of the 12 tribes of Israel. She was a mother who had to share, because she shared Jacob with Leah. Then there was a woman named Jochebed. She was the one who had a plan. Mothers have plans for their children all the time. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes they're not. But this plan was good because she was the mother of Moses. And Moses was under a threat of death by Pharaoh's order. So when Moses became too big to really hide, she put him in the reed basket and floated him down the river. Now the question was, she must have known that someone was going to be there. So maybe she knew that it was the habit of Pharaoh's daughter to come to the river, because that's what happened. Not only that, she sent her daughter to talk Pharaoh's daughter into having a nursemaid for this new baby, which happened to be the mother of the baby. But she was the mother who had a plan. Then there was a mother by the name of, we think, of Hazelnupanai. She was a mother who followed the rules. She followed the rules because God said for her to have a son, she would have a son, and not to cut the son's hair. The son, of course, was Samson. And she didn't. And we all know how strong Samson became against the Philistines, according to the Bible, when his hair was not cut. When that happened, when he fell under the spell of someone else and had his hair cut, things fell apart. But anyway, that's the mother who followed the rules. Then there was a woman by the name of Naomi. He went to Moab because there was a famine in Bethlehem. And her sons married 2 Moabites. And she spread her faith to those 2 women, one of whom returned back to Jerusalem with her, because of the fact that she adopted this new faith. She was a mother who spread the faith. We want mothers today to spread the faith because they need to bring more people back with them. She spread the faith, and what did it lead to? A marriage between Ruth and Boaz, they then fathered Ohab, who was the father of Jesse, who in turn became the father of King David. Then there was Hannah. Hannah was another woman who was barren, and she prayed for a child. And she said that if God would give her a child, then she would dedicate this child to the service of God for the rest of his life. And her prayers were answered. She had a son. And she did that. Whenever the son was weaned, she dedicated him to the temple. His name was Samuel. His name was Samuel. And he became a leader, dedicator, and one of the early ones who changed the course of Israel's history from the judges to the kingship. She was a mother who kept her promise. There was one more who kept her faith, who believed in miracles, and who kept her faith in that. Her name was Elizabeth. Her husband Zachariah wasn't quite so straightforward. He didn't believe in miracles, and he paid for it for a while. But she did. And of course, she became pregnant. Her son was named John. And the last, of course, was the one who was most blessed, Mary, the mother of Christ. All these attributes are applicable today. We want women. We want mothers who can follow some of these same attributes and who end up being blessed. These attributes sometimes translate into what we now call the mother's proverbs. We've all had these as we grow up. The proverbs that deal with life. And you've all heard it. The proverb that deals with logic. If you fall off that swing and break your neck, you can't go to the store. One who deals with medicine If you don't stop crossing your eyes, they're going to freeze that way. Remember those? To think ahead. If you don't pass your spelling test, you'll never get a good job. How to meet a challenge. What were you thinking? Answer me when I talk to you. Don't talk back. Heard that? Humor. When that lawnmower cuts off your toes, don't come running to me. How to become an adult. If you don't eat your vegetables, you'll never grow up. About sex. How do you think you got here? About genetics. You were just like your father. Or about your roots. Do you think you were born in a barn? Did you hear that one? Remember that one?
Yeah.
The wisdom of age. When you get to be my age, you will understand. Or anticipation. Just wait till your father gets home. Or receiving. You are going to get it when we get home. And of course, justice. One day you will have kids of your own, and I hope they grow up to be just like you. Then you'll see what it's like. The Proverbs of motherhood. The attributes of motherhood. All things to think about this Mother's Day.